And welcome to my desk. It is the World of Watercolor Month, so I think it's an appropriate time to upload this video about my entire watercolor collection. So I am trying to keep up with the World of Watercolor Month, and today is the 7th, so the prompt was house, and I'm a little bit ahead because tomorrow we are scheduled to do something, and also in the weekend. So I already made the prompt for tomorrow, which was bronze, and I chose to depict the sun wagon, we call it here in Denmark. Also, we call it like the portal to the Bronze Age. It was found in a place in Denmark called Odsherred, about 1300 years before the birth of Christ. And I think it was in 1902 that it was found, and it was immediately, depicted as a very religious symbol for the Bronze Age, because back then, they thought that the earth was flat, and they also thought that the sun had to be carried from one end to the other on the sky by some helpers, and in this case, the helper is a horse. So it's actually a horse who is carrying a disc of the sun from one end to the other on the sky. And then the next prompt was Gogh, and I kind of got myself into some troubles because first I drew the net of the Gogh, and then I realized, I also have to draw the back side of the net because it's kind of transparent. And I also got myself into issues with the geometric shapes of the cube shapes on the football itself, so I didn't really plan so much about this drawing, and it turned out to be kind of a math problem in the end. But I'm approaching this watercolor month prompts with like speed, because it's not gonna be something that has to take a long time and I have to ponder a lot about, because otherwise I won't complete it at all. So this is a good example of just jumping into an idea and then on the way kind of understand that, oh no, I chose a geometric nightmare to depict. So yep, but okay, you know what, let's talk watercolors. Let's talk watercolors, my favorite media. And let's start with the culprit. It simply has to be Jane Davenport. And I have to say that the first palettes I had, first of all, I got introduced to Jane Davenport late 2016, like December or something. Oh, let me think back. Why did I? You know what? Before that time, it just occurred to me that my YouTube must have looked strange when I opened it, because my account were not infiltrated with all sorts of art suggested videos in the sidebars and stuff. And I recall that we were renovating the house, and I was having a Hobonichi calendar where I had a pencil set making small doodles, nothing significant. And we were looking for a trailer because we were kind of fed up living in the house, working in the house, while this huge house renovation was going on. So we had like imaginations about, imagine if you could take a trailer, like a home wagon, and put in the yard and live in that. So I remember I started following several people from, I think it was called Tiny House Nation or something back then. Yeah, I think it was Tiny House Nation. And later on it became like Tiny House Hunters. And there were some painters and artists living off the grid that I started to follow. And I remember I saw this elvish painter, and that kind of led to suggested Jane Davenport that I started to click on and look. And that was my slippery slope, the rabbit hole into this hobby. So I wanted to paint like Jane Davenport, trying to learn. So I enlisted on her online course. I noticed that she was coming with a product launch release January 2017. where she basically launched a whole line of product. Like in my universe, it was like everything you need to follow her course, her online classes, right? So instead of me having to try figuring out where to buy stuff and yada yada, I just plunged in and bought so much from her first product release, thinking that now I got like her stash. So no matter what she grabs for, whether it's a white pen or, I don't know, an ink brush, crayons, watercolor, whatnot, I would be able to follow up because I had the same supply, right? And maybe get the same result. So I anticipated that huge parcel from Australia to Denmark, and it was like 3, maybe 4 weeks on the road, and I couldn't wait those 4 weeks. So I got sucked up by Owen's Art's YouTube playlist, where he introduced me to the brand Schminke. That's his favorite watercolor. So while I was waiting for the shipping to arrive from these watercolor pens, I actually went out and bought myself a 12 half-pan Schminke set. It's been used up, and I just kept the empty tin because, not that I'm a brand snob, but who can part with a tin with the Schminke logo on, right? I can't. So, but I wanted to tell you about that shipping from Jane Davenport. It came with these 2 palettes, and then she also offered her selection of Schminke, which was the first 2 rows, 24 selected Daniel Smith watercolors, arrived in this Schminke tin, and it was also some Schminke color. So it was like a mix of Schminke and Daniel Smith, something that she handpicked, you know. So this was the bundle that arrived in my house and kind of ignited my whole joy and fascination about this wet media watercolors. I actually have removed the paint that was inside here into another tin. Speaking of Jane Davenport, I first had this filled up with her pencils called Magic Wand, and then when they were down to nubs, I threw them out and then went back and dumpster dived the metal case because I couldn't part with it. And now it's a house or a home for some of the original pans that I got from that first shipping. But as you can see, my selection of Daniel Smith and Schminke grew. So let me get back to this palette in a while. You may wonder, why don't I open this? What's in this? In here is all my Prima. I think they're called Prima Confection, but now they're called something else. But it was like American Craft. They had these releases of black tins with 12 half pans in each, and it was like they were coming, like they released, was it like every second month or something? And I only have 4 sets, and 4 of these sets is actually what fits into this 48 case right here. And I so love the Prima colors so much. I think I love them so much because the texture and the experience feeling when you use them is very similar to the Jane Davenport. I really became very familiar with these 2 pans right here, or palettes, because I don't know, those were like the go-to for the first paintings that I did. So being familiar with these pans made it so easy for me to fall in love with the Primas. And I have to say that if I was an American citizen, I would have bought every set that Prima released. You Americans were able to purchase it very inexpensively compared to us from Europe, who had to pay import taxes of 40% plus shipping and yada yada. So yeah, but now here in Denmark you can sometimes get these in our scrapbook stores, whatnot, you know. So I don't know, I just feel like I entered the world of watercolor at the same time where all sorts of craft paint palette was introduced, like 2018, the market was just flooded with these inexpensive palettes. So, and they seemed so cheap because we would pay like 18 bucks just for a metal tin, like an empty metal tin, right? And then suddenly for like the same amount you could buy the tin but with colors inside. So I just entered the market riding on that wave of crazy purchase of inexpensive craft watercolors. I love them so much. But that was actually a long speech, I think necessary to kind of tell about my entry into this, this journey, you could call it. And this is actually my Rolls-Royce palette. It contains of very interesting pans. Some of them are granulated schminke, and they were gifted to me from Sandra Scraps to Beauty, and also from sets, a glacier set that I purchased myself. And a lot of them are Daniel Smith, who are handpicked because I watched review on YouTube about their quality. And just to give an example, like this, I think it's called Moonglow from Daniel Smith. I was enabled by Steve Mitchell, Mind of Watercolors, to replace my shadow tone with this shimmery dark purple. Like, I mean, just sprinkles on your drawing, right? So I have to say that this is a precious palette, and I know that all the paint in here is expensive, so this is not the palette I grab if I just want to fool around with a big giant wet wash. For that I use other palettes. Just so you know that when I take out this palette on my table, it's because I'm kind of serious about my painting, not fooling around. So very, very likable paint. And you could say that this was like enough, like a good start, good selection, good watercolors, fun watercolors to play with, where you can make a lot of mistakes without, you know, burning off a lot of money wasted in the rinse jar. But I couldn't stop there. No, I had to expand. So let me see what else. I think the next palette I bought was actually a Van Gogh, a white pocket 12 half pan. And I used it all up, and then one of my employees, coworker, he have a kid, and he was taking his kid with him at work because the school was off. And I noticed that the kid was very interested in my drawings and stuff. So I sat down and, you know, introduced him to watercolor. And when he left that day, I gave him my white Van Gogh pocket filled up with some colors and brushes so that he can continue at this fabulous hobby when he came home. So, but I just wanted to say that I also have had a Van Gogh that I used up. And then came this big rave about, oh, these White Nights. White Night is watercolors, fairly inexpensive, super good quality, and I think we like them so much because of the price range, right? And because they come in full pans. The way that I entered my White Night was to buy a cardboard palette that I totally couldn't use as a palette because there was like no mixing tray, and if you get the cardboard wet it will like crinkle on you. So I found this wooden case, and then I put in all my White Nights, and I also on open stock bought more separate pans. So that's why my White Night palette consists of a mix of different pans. Like you can see, this is a transparent pan looking really sketchy, and this is the generic white plastic pan that it comes with. And then I took some white vinyl and glued to the top of the lid to give myself a mixing tray. And I really enjoy using white plastic vinyl for homemade palettes as mixing trays, because as you can see, the paint does not bead up, so it's like porcelain a little bit, but it's a good choice. These white knights are very, very durable. It's a full pan. That's a tongue twister. And when I say full pan, it's like the paint is bulking over the top. It's like surface tension is holding back that last drop of paint. So when you get your white knights, you think that, oh, I'm never gonna hit pan with them. So they're like everlasting awesome paint. I love my palette, this one, a lot. Okay, maybe I should, for just the sake of it, should we try and open some of these palette, you know, just to make like an interesting picture of the madness? Because I sure have a lot of watercolors. I'm not even ashamed of it, because to me it's just like joy. And especially when it comes to these, I would call them inexpensive student grade palette. They're just so fun to put in your basket, you know. This is Prang watercolor. There was a lot of reviews on this on YouTube, so I got enabled to try them out, because it was presented as juicy, and some people even compared them a little bit with the engrams, like that juicy sticky pan that never really dries up in the palette. And I was interested in the engrams at a very early stage, but my wallet kept saying no. So I got this set and tried it out, and I really like it. And it is true, it is like a fun palette to play with, and they come in larger palettes, so not just these. So yeah, I can totally recommend those if you just want something, you know, for a journal. What was next? I'm looking around because I kind of want to do this in a chronologic order, you know. I actually think that the pink Paul Rubens is next. But before, I want to do Paul Rubens all in a group by itself, because he is special, you know. Yeah, we got this Jerry Q palette, and I think I bought this palette not so much because of the paint, but because of the palette. I'll have more purchases like that later. What's so cool about this palette is that look how the lid just lies flat on the table, so there's like no slant. Look at the lip around this lid, so you can have like a giant wet wash that will stay in this tray, because the lip is all the way around this. That really caught my eye. And then you've got these wings here that you can flap out. And what's cool about this position is, okay, now it's getting a little bit nerdy. Here you can have your palette on top of your sketchbook. So your sketchbook are here, your palette on top, your rinsing jar on the right, and then free place to put your brushes down on a cloth or something, you know. Because normally when I paint on my table, I don't have the luxury of having my palette in this direction on top of my sketchbook. I will need to slant it and have my sketchbook right here. And being a nerd, can you picture how that color range, like rainbow formation, is getting slanted when your palette is lying like this, unless you have room to place it like that? So if you're like a nerd like me who really likes to have your palette positioned in a rainbow formation in this direction here, but want to have mixing trays on the side, this is a damn good palette. So I can really recommend this, because the versatility of where you can put it on your table. And the selling point was this porcelain tiny tray. It's so cute. I don't really know. Are you supposed to put ink in it? I don't know. but it's just super cute with that porcelain tray, right? So, but oh, I forgot to talk about what's inside this. There were some paint inside of this that I took out, and because it's such a cool palette, it now houses Sennelier and Daniel Smith primary. What was that set? It was a tube set of 6 Daniel Smith. I think it was called Essential Daniel Smith tube sets, and then Sennelier. So a lot of my go-to best palettes are a mix of brands where I just put in the pans that I like and not thinking so much about the brand name. So this is a cool one. Maybe you want to see where the paint that arrived in this one ended up. Well, it recently ended up in this palette. It's a Gogh set, and I am a sucker for kids. And Gogh released this paint set where you could get like brushes, paper, sharpener, water brush, paint, palette, and it's a metal palette for like no money at all. So I collected the Jerry Q palette and the Gogh palette into this palette, and what was left over ended up in a travel kit that I got for my, outdoor sketching. So that way I ended up with having a palette that I can take with me outside, that I wouldn't be so sad if it didn't return back home. Because I'm telling you what, this palette right here with my Daniel Smith will never leave the house. No. I would be so sad if it didn't return back home, just because I had to take a small trip somewhere and if my bag got stolen, can you imagine? So some of my palettes never leave the home, but paints like this is fun to carry with you. So that's where the Jerry Q paint ended up in a mix with the Gogh paint. Yeah, and you will find that a lot when I talk about my watercolors, that all my original deliveries are being mixed and matched up to what I like to encounter in the palette. So it's a little bit confusing to watch my watercolor collection in that. Now we're talking about that time area where handmade watercolors was like really popular, and Debbie Epps, she is doing these handmade shimmery mica watercolors, and I really love them a lot. And on top of that, I got some pans that I received from Sandra's Grab to Beauty. So this is a cute little tin also, talking about travel, that you could actually just take with you in a bag. I never did the Altoid tin travel kits, the homemade, I never did like the tiny small kits, but I did do bag kits, like pack a bag of a light footprint of what sketchbook would I pick, what pen, what brush, what palette, how to carry my water, how to make myself a rinsing jar, I did a lot of backpacking, like it was just fun. But yeah, travel watercolor kit, this is my favorite. It's from Winsor & Newton, and it comes, I know that mostly they sell them with the artist grade Winsor & Newton, but mine is with Cutman, and because it was Cutman, it was also in and fairly, like, what's it called? It was cheap. It was cheaper than the artist grade to begin with, and then it was on clearance, is it called that? So I really did not pay a lot for this, and I often think that, oh, I should have bought 2 because then I would have 2 sets, and one I would be able to mix up with different paint. But that's like greedy Lena speaking, because I think this small kit got it all. Got the water, the brush holder, the sponge, the mixing trays. So, the little tiny thing you can hold here, and it's made in plastic. So in case you, like me, are a little bit, you know, if I have a metal ring like that and I finish my painting, I will have this print on my skin from the metal. I don't know. That's also why you don't see me wear so much jewelry. Because my skin reacts to metal. So just the fact that this is a plastic ring is just nice, you know. But I only got one set of this, and that should be enough. So, yeah, I'm just greedy, you know. When I find something that I really like, I'm like, oh, I should have got 2, double, and extra. What if this got lost? But that just proves that I totally love the design so much. Okay, looking at small palettes. Are we jumping in time? Let me see if I can catch up in time. Okay, if I should do that, this one is fun to pull out. Lindsay the Frugal Crafter got a lot of these, I will call them like a fan palette. You know, tiny wings that fan out and becomes a palette. So I bought this one to try it out. And oh, can you see when I open up mine, it just comes out, it crumbles. Small crumbles falls out. And it's because when I use it and it dries up, it kind of curls up on the edges. So oh, can you see how fragile it is? So with that in mind, I would say that it's an annoying palette, but otherwise I love it. I mean, it's just a fun tool to take out in the garden with you, and it's not a precious tool. So I have to admit, I don't like to sit out in full sun with my Sennelier paints because I know the binder is honey. So I'm thinking, oh, am I gonna melt my pants? But this I have taken out in the garden with me a couple of times. And it's just lays flat, super nice, very summery because there's so many, I think there's like 58 colors in this one. So all the colors just lit up in the sunlight and speaks to you like, paint with me. So that's a really nice palette. Okay, let me just gently close it back up without smashing more of the fragile pans. Okay, now I'm gonna clear my table because now I feel that we need to talk about Paul Rubens, which is a gem in my collection. Yup. Okay, let's hit it with John Rubens. Oh wow, Paul Rubens. But before, I just want to say something. My Pelican palette actually arrived black, and because it looks so much like my Schminke palette, I asked hubby to help me spray paint it, so that's why it's teal. And it looked like it was totally easy for him. He just took painter's tape around the lip of the palette, and then he flipped it, opened it up, and then spray painted it. And then I went on with a brush and gave it a coat of clear lacquer to prevent the paint from chipping. And I have been very rough with this palette, you know, like sliding it on my table and stuff. And look, it's still totally pristine. None of the spray paint has been chipped off. So I think it's a good idea if you spray paint your palettes to give it a coat with lacquer. And look, now it's easy for me to, when I dig in my stash, to just find it. And oh my lord, spray paint comes with so many lush colors that you can actually get a really fun collection if you start painting your palettes. But talk about color on a palette. I watched Sandra Scraps to Beauty unbox a pink Paul Rubens, and it arrives in a box like this. So first she had this cute pink box on her table, right? And then she folded out this pink cloth, and inside was this dream pink of a palette. And back then most of us was used to having like black tin palettes, so just the fact that it was pink, I was sold right there. So she enabled me to try the Paul Rubens paint. And I have been loving this palette so much. In fact, I painted it all down to the bottom, used it all, and that's why I have been looking for, should I buy another one or should I just try and refill it? And then I am so lucky that Paul Rubens released tube sets. A floral set is the one that I bought. And the floral set actually makes you able to, how can I explain it? The floral set is a good add-on to this palette because it comes with colors that are not in this palette and some are. So you're able to add new colors to your palette, and then if you buy the other tube set from Paul Rubens, you will be able to refill this palette. So this palette is so dear to me because I really love the paint. I have used it a lot, and for some reason it was my go-to palette for a lot of things. So being able to fill it up now is just precious. And the rest of the paint that I used to refill this, the tubes that are totally correspondent to the pans itself are put aside, you know, for refill, and the excessive extra colors are put in this palette. Okay, let me just talk one palette at a time. But this is a super lovely palette. Okay, this is like I had a tube set from Paul Rubens, and we were scheduled a trip to Sweden, and I knew that, I want to bring that new paint from Paul Rubens with me to Sweden. So as a travels palette, I went out in the garage and totally stole from my hobby this clear container that consists of this thing you can take out, and then they have like little lids. And when it was all clear, clean, and transparent, it looked so cute and so precious that I was thinking this was born to house a travel kit of watercolors. So of course I glued on my plastic white vinyl space here for a mixing area, squeezed all the paint into this, and then our basement got flooded. So I did not make it to Sweden that year. The year after I got sick, the year after that COVID came. So I have in fact had 3 scheduled trips to Sweden that all of them I never ever went on. So I have never utilized this palette as a travels palette. But then Miranda Watson started her YouTube challenge called Use It Up, where she has a Himi watercolor set that she tries to see how long does it actually take to use up a whole palette, which is a good question, you know, because it's so easy to put these palettes in your shopping bin, but it actually takes such a long time to use up a set of watercolors because the pans are so durable. So I enrolled with her challenge by using this palette. So this actually has a purpose at the moment. But I want to say, in case anyone out there feel unable to, go get this fishing kind of container and use it as a paint palette, don't do it. First of all, imagine all these tiny lids open. I should have some music going on here, like background. Okay, I'm not gonna open all of them. Can you already now tell how annoying it is to maneuver with your brush into these areas here? The only pro is that there is a high lip, so you can go in with a fat brush and then squeeze out the excess water on the lip edge here, which sometimes is quite hard to do in regular palettes because the pans are so shallow. That's the only pro about this. The con is when you have added a lot of water like this in your little container and you need to let it dry out because you don't want mold in your palette, you're leaving this open on your desk for days. I'm telling you, it was just open on my desk for a long time, and then this bad thing happens. Dust come in it, cat hair. You can see there is a merged cat hair that's like totally melted into this viridian green here. And to me, that's messy, you know, that's disgusting. If a palette takes like 4 days to dry out, and within those 4 days you're reusing it once more time. So I kind of will not recommend using these small containers for wet media that has to dry up, you know, because it's a never-ending process. So, but okay, back to Paul Rubens. Oh, I think the next palette that Sandra Scraps to Beauty enabled me to was the Shimmery palette. Oh Lord, I have never regret buying this. I was a little bit, should I get it? Because I actually got a Prima palette of some round cakes, and I totally dismantled that. Hang on. This is my gouache palette. I'm not taking gouache into this stream because I only have 3 sets of gouache. So, yeah, but look, I got this plastic palette from Prima with these shimmery round cakes. And the plastic palette, first the lid broke, so I couldn't close the lid. And then some corner of the palette cracked. And then I just decided, you know what, I hate this palette. So I just took them out. But this had some similar, it looked like it, similar colors to the Prima, but oh Lord, when I swatched it out, there is a huge difference when it comes to shimmery paint in quality. And I think a lot of us has been battling to find the right gold, the right copper, you know. So, but I just want to say that I love this palette. And it's so, I don't know, very beautiful to look at, because the difference between a shimmery palette and a regular watercolor palette is that these look like jewelry. Like, I don't know, it's just looking down in the jewelry box. Let me just try to clean it up. Oh Lord, I should have cleaned up my palettes before I decided to flash them out there in the YouTube void. But yeah, very pretty. The thing with Paul Rubens is that they comes with a twist. Every time they release a palette, there is this twist. It's not like the same thing. The twist is like first colors, then new colors, then shimmery colors, and then the latest one. I had to have this. The design looks like the whiskey palette with a very deep well, and I do like to do big wet washes, so I appreciate a palette that comes with a mixing tray that can hold a lot of water. The weight of this palette is just like yummy, and the texture on this palette is also like the selling point for a girl like me. And then inside the palette you have a range of colors that are built in with micas. It shows up so badly when you stream, so it's not like this stream friendly palette, but when you're standing in person with your nose next to the drawing, you can so see that minute shimmer. I mean, it is just so likable. And sure, you can get the Winsor & Newton mica and then add to your original watercolor palette and make those mica palettes yourself. But it's just so nice to have convenient mixed palettes. That's where it's built in to begin with. So I love it. If you paint a lot, this is fun, because it's just, you can paint the same painting, one using regular watercolor, and then it's a whole new different feeling to reproduce that same painting using this kind of paint, because it's just fun to see how it dances, you know, when it mixes wet on paper. So to me, that totally just sparks joy. Then Paul Rubens actually released a tube set of fluorescent watercolors right in the time span where I was very infatuated by Art by Marlene and her fluorescent bright colors. So of course I had to go get that one also. It comes in tubes, so I just squeeze out whatever I need. I don't have it in a palette because I kind of like this aesthetic look of these. And it's like 5 ml tubes. They are so cute. They can line the palm of your hand. It's like miniature pea tubes. And I think it's because I'm used to the 7 ml Arteza tubes, you know. So yeah, this is just so cute. But I want to say that the way I utilize those lately is to mix it with original watercolor. When I'm painting flowers, some of my petals get this fluorescent mixed in to make it glow or seem more transparent, you know. So it's, I would say, an effect paint. A lot of palettes have like fluorescent colors in them to begin with, but the selling point for this tube set is that they have experienced more on the red tones. So if you like to paint flowers, I would say that this section right here is very interesting to play with. So yeah, that was this. Lovely, lovely. Once again, thumbs up for the packaging. Sturdy cardboard with nice graphic designs on. Rumor is that Pretty Excellent is the student grade of Paul Rubens, so of course I wanted a tin like this, also because it's in teal. I told you guys, sometimes I buy watercolors just because of the casing. But who can say no to a teal palette for 18 bucks, right? 36 colors, and I am blown away by the quality compared to the money. This is my go-to travel set. If I ever managed to get to Sweden in a holiday, this is the palette I would carry with me. The reason is because I know the paint. I am in love with the quality of the paint. I wouldn't be sad if it didn't return back home with me, because it was, in my world, like an inexpensive, like I can replace this without my bank calling me on the phone. So really love this purchase. Yeah, very, very likable. Paul Rubens. But can you see, like, my love for Paul Rubens cost an addition of 6 palettes to my collection. But it's okay. Okay, and now for these palettes. That kind of comes with a story with this poster paint. I know, poster paint is not watercolor. It's like an opaque, like gouache kind of paint. What happened was that my son, when he was in high school, they turned in their school to a project where they flipped their school to be a little town for 2 weeks. So they had their own bakery, newspaper, bank, they had their own monetary system, they had politicians, they had like people selling clothes, sewing clothes, like there were a lot of things. And my son was enrolled in a group of 29 students, mixed up from other classes, you know, the whole school. And their job was to make signs and posters, because all those tiny shops and whatnot should have like posters up front. And then it was a grand finale where all the parents was visiting this town in school. And so there was a lot of writing and posters to do. And because it's driven like not a volunteer, like you know, like, what is it called? What is the word I'm looking for? They basically ask the students to go home to their parents and ask for supply to keep down the cost from the school, right? So my son knew that his mom was really a fan of watercolors, so he signed me up to deliver water-soluble media for this class, you could call it. And the rule was that they were not allowed to paint with acrylic or alcohol markers or oil paint, like anything that would like really stain their clothes. It had to be water soluble. So they were using poster paint, watercolor, and water based markers and stuff like that. And I thought initially when he came home, like, yeah, I can, you know, lend out my palettes, no problem. And then I realized that I had to lend them out for 3 weeks, because 1 week was prepping, and then the 2 weeks was the duration of the project, you know. And now I hope that I'm speaking to the fear of any watercolor hoarders out there. Imagine having to select some palettes from your beloved stash to lend out to, in this case, 29 students that you don't really know, because it wasn't like his regular classmates, you know. So I totally freaked out, and in the last moment I went out and then I shopped for it. Of course I bought poster paints that I could grab, you know, that they could use. And then in panic I bought 4 of these Pelican palettes. And right now the 4th of this palette is on its way as Happy Mail. And I'm so sorry, I can tell who it is. It's Anne Lara. She's going to receive a Pelican palette from me. And I'm so sorry to send you what you would call like used stash. But now maybe you understand, because I have 4 of these palettes and I do want to give watercolor in Happy Mail, because watercolor have brought me so much joy. So the first thing I think about if I should ship out something that could make another person happy would be watercolors. But money is a little bit low at the moment, so I picked one of my Pelican palettes. Some of the palettes came back like totally bashed, you know. I tried, this one is actually cleaned up. This one is not. And then one of the palette, instead of buying this style, I bought this one. It's so funny. Look, it comes with a tray and everything. It comes with like this tiny, tiny tray for brushes. But I want to say that this is a German brand. It is so transparent. It is so nice. And when it comes to cake pans, this is called a cake because it's round. When it comes to these cake watercolors, I really, really love the Pelican brand. It is like, I think it's compatible with Grumbacher. I've never had a Grumbacher palette in my hand or tried out the paint, but from the reviews that I have watched on YouTube, I really think that this Pelican brand beats it. So if you're out there and you need to buy some supplies that are usable for art journal, and you want transparent cake watercolor palette, I can so recommend this German brand called Pelican. It's transparent, mixes so beautiful, and you can take out all the there we go. You can take out all the pans and swap them around. So in case that you buy a huge set and you only use like 10 of them for the most for your art journaling, you can really set up your palette to your the ones that you prefer to dig after. So yeah, I'm rambling now. But I just wanted to include this in my showdown of my palettes. Look, could you imagine? Look how some kid just decorated the lid of this palette. Could you imagine if I received my Paul Rubens back in this state? Sure, I could have given him the Prima and maybe the Jane Davenport, and then no, because Jane Davenport means something special to me, because she's the one who kind of kick-started my whole artistic journey. So, yeah. But now at least I got these in my stash. Now we're talking about these kits, you know, that comes with some fun stuff. I bought this Graphitin pan pocket set, they call it. I do have the Graphitin pencil set. So this is basically just the same, just put out in pans with a water brush and a sponge. And a very nice palette that comes with this nice mixing tray that lays flat on the table, and there is like this tiny lid, so it can actually hold some water, you know. This is actually the style of palette that Daniel Smith should have released when they came with their pan watercolor sets. I think they had like a horrible palette, refraining me from buying it. Anyway, I really enjoy this set a lot, and just to prove out there that I don't just shop, you know, I think before I add to my collection, because now my watercolor collection has reached this level where I think I am a little bit greedy and got too much, you know, that I can barely manage to use it up before I die. I want to put out there that on my wish list is the Inktense pocket sets from Durban. So I still crave watercolor sets. Isn't it insane? But the only thing that's keeping me back from buying it is because I was on a non-stop buying, you know, since 2020, 2021, and also the beginning of this year. I have been on a no-spend journey. But my wish list in those 2 years where I've been on this no-spend consists of, I think, 60% of watercolor sets that I would die to own. And lots of them are craft companies coming out with cute sets that has sponges and water brushes. There's something they get me with these add-ons. Like, it's just a stupid sponge, but in my head I'm thinking, what a cool palette. Like, you can have water down here, you know, if you don't like the sponge. So Artistro came with paper, and look when I open the lid. But before I open the lid, check out this case. Have you ever seen such a cute teal metal case with this clasp? Oh, it totally got me with the clasp and this finished metal hinge here. So yeah, and then look when I open the lid, ta-da! We got a water brush, pencil, a tiny brush, eraser, and that ridiculous sponge that oh, it didn't help if I flipped it. And that ridiculous sponge that I know some hate it and never use it. I use them. And I really, really love this set. I love it because it's like a kit. It got it all, you know. And then what's fun about this set is that the pigments are grainy, so when you water them down like really ridiculous, they release their binder and then floats on the paper in tiny specks. I have never seen any paint act like that before, so that's why it's so fun to paint with. And I think with a lot of these inexpensive sets, if you push them, you'll find that they have a quality that none of your other paint have. So that's why I will always love to keep buying these kits and sets, because you never know what you get, right? Not to sound like Forrest Gump, but isn't it just lovely? I love it. So yep, let me see what else I could chronologically come to now. I think we are there where I got my Sennelier crush. I love Sennelier. They layer so well, and I have been adding to this palette since, I would say, 2019. Yeah, 2019. For a whole year. First of all, I bought this wooden case, and it came with a Raphael squirrel brush, really likable, and it comes with a ceramic. Now open it up. Ta-da! This is something I glued on. It came with this ceramic mixing tray. Oh, so lovely. And then it came with 24 Sennelier colors. And on open stock, I have been each month randomly adding. So now I have this palette right here. It kind of grew, so I had to move up here. So I MacGyvered it by putting in some painted chopsticks to give myself other rows. and it's still got room to grow. I think there are 300 Sennelier colors to choose from. On the flap, I made this flap where I got my swatch on one side, and then right here I saved all the packaging info because it tells you a lot about the pigments. Yeah, and then if I run out of one color, I know where to look to replace it. I freaking love this, and the reason why I got some highlighted here was because I was following Steve Mitchell, Mind of Watercolors. His limit palette was consisting of those colors that are highlighted. So for a long period of time I was painting just using those, you know, trying to teach myself some Steve Mitchell tricks. But let's talk Steve Mitchell. I watched Owen's art and also Steve Mitchell. Love to watch their YouTube channels, and Owen's got a love for schminke, so I totally have tried some of his schminke. Owen's art also have a love of actually both of them for core paints. So they enabled me to dip my toes and try out the core. I pushed out the whole tube in this container here. It came with this palette, which is a little bit unusual because there were like whole tubes inside, and then this mixing tray, and there was like no pans to squeeze out the paint itself. And I kind of love the brand print on top of this, so of course I wanted to use this as a palette. But in here I got my core paints. They are a runner. I mean, they feather out on wet washes like no other paints that I have, so I love them a lot. And it actually kind of works and holds up that homemade palette that I made. How did I do it? I think it's laminated cardboard, so that's why it's rather thick. And the seal of the bottom is sealed with matte medium, you know, so they don't, you know, when it's wet, they don't run into their neighbor color. So I know this is like a very crazy palette to look at, but I managed to keep it fairly neat compared to how much these wells has been filled, you know, squeezing out a whole tube in one of these squares. They were like really filled, you know. So yeah, I really enjoy this paint. Good paint. But as we all know, Steve Mitchell, he is an M. Grant fan lover, also Lindsay the Frugal Crafter, so it had to come, right? So in 2019 I invested in M. Grant, and I love it so much. I chose this wonderful palette, and I'll tell you why I love this palette for so many reasons. First of all, it comes with a tray that you can mix on, and you can take off the tray and put it to the sink when you need to rinse it. Then the wells comes with a slant, so that water will slant down to the bottom of the well, and you can, you know, dilute your mix up here. Then the well size itself speaks to a person who likes to use big brushes. Oh, this is a 22 Da Vinci. Look how effortless you can use like a huge brush in this palette. Bring it over to this huge mixing tray and then just do your business, you know. So I must say that this palette is just so perfect and suitable if you like to use also these Japanese styled brushes. I really so love this palette. I actually love M. Grant so much. I got them in tubes, you know, they sell in tubes. I also bought a Robax wheel, and I bought it because on Patty Tolly Parry's stream I saw that on the left side of her desk she had that round cheese wheel, a Robax palette. So I have a Robax where the same colors are squeezed out in wells, but I didn't bring it to this stream because it's actually basically just the same. But why have the same paint in 2 different palettes? Because I love the paint so much. I want variety where I need to paint, so it's nice to have it in 2 different places. But very, very nice paint. Some of my favorite. So thanks to all the people who are taking time to make uploads on YouTube and reviews and inspire people like me to go get some good stuff. I really appreciate it. Remember the hype there was about the Kuretake Gansai Tambi palettes? Well, it took me a while to fall in love with this palette. I bought it because of all the good reviews and also the aesthetic about the, the way the paint is in this palette. Mine is totally beat up, so it doesn't present itself as delicious as, the reviews does. It looks so aesthetically nice when you see reviews of new palettes. But I fell in love with the idea of being able to work in big washes because the pans are humongous. Look how wide this pan is. I mean, you can come in with your widest brush and not damaging your, is it called bristle, by digging into a small pan. I mean, it's just really likable. It took me some time to crack the code how to paint with this. The binder is different from European watercolors. So if you use mass tone with this watercolor, you can end up with a very lacquered surface, like a shiny surface. So it kind of took me a while to get to know this palette and fall in love with it. And I got enabled by Janet M. Young to buy this watercolor book from Kirsty Rice. It's called The Art for Joy's Sake. And I used this book with this palette, and when I was done doing most of the paintings in this watercolor book, I was in love with this Kuretake Gansai Tambi brand. I mean, look at those luscious color, saturated colors that you can get. I mean, it's just, I'm just flipping through. I'm hoping the camera picks up how bright, vibrant, how versatile this palette is. You can mix with, look, oh my god, it's so beautiful. So, yeah. But I will always think about this nice coloring book in conjunction with this palette because that was such a nice summer, spending time with Kuretake Gansai Tambi. So, yeah, let me take a sip of water and be back. I almost forgot to talk about the peerless watercolors. Now I store them in my huge junk journal. Let me see if I can flip up to it. I actually got them from Jane Davenport, that huge haul that I got. And they came in sheets of paper. This is what I got left of that 60 set of peerless watercolors because I sent out happy mails to, I remember 2 friends, Fibs, received this palette, you could call it, from me in Happy Mail. I just want to show it. I think everybody knows it, but it's peerless watercolor on a piece of paper, and then I glue on a strip of it, and then I just take transparency and lay in between so they don't contaminate each other when the book is closed. And that's how you can actually get like a portable palette inside a book. Isn't it cool? And then you can add your own selection of watercolor paper so you've got something decent to paint on, So I really had fun with these peerless watercolors. Now we're coming to something different, the Van Gogh black watercolor paper. Yoo-hoo! I received a sheet of black watercolor paper and a shimmery pan from Sandra Scraps to Beauty. And when I tried to paint on that black paper, it was really a fun experience. So I went out and bought this Van Gogh set. And these colors here and that one shows up really funky and fun on black paper. And then they have this very gilded, shimmery gold copper and dark gold, and I'm almost speechless. That's very likable pans right there. It kind of beats the Paul Rubens shimmery gold in my opinion. So yeah, I really love this this set. It was a fun effect paint palette. I would call it like effect paint. So yeah, and it can't stand alone. I mean, you just can't grab this and say, now I got watercolor. So it's one of those add-ons to your existing palettes. Okay, Lindsay the Frugal Crafter had a review on this Art and Fly 72 watercolor case. I really like cases with these big lids that holds up a lot of water. For some odd reason, I like to use my mixes in my whole painting. So I like that I can have a puddle down here of some mix and then a puddle here, and then I can drag those two together, and then in the end when I need to add additional shadows, I can twirl with my brush throughout the whole paint, kind of cleaning up your your palette by making your own dark like that. So that's been like a style that I paint. Like, so I bring some colors to a big tray and then twirl them all together to make my darks. But once again, this palette caught my eye because of these damn sponges. What's up with me and these sponges? I don't know. I do use them. Now I'm flipping them over just for the sake of the nice footage. When I bought this palette, I had the fluorescent Paul Rubens in tubes, and I also had some granulating colors from Schminke from their granulating sets in tubes. And I was kind of thinking that, or maybe I had those tubes after I bought this palette. I don't know, I'm getting confused now. But I do know that in my head, I'm thinking that when I'm done with this palette, I'm gonna remove the paint and then make it into a house where I got fluorescent paint up here. And then when I become rich, I can start buying in some granular tube sets. Because, I don't know, it's just, there's a good space for that here. What I'm trying to say here is that sometimes a palette got a plan, but then you become too stingy because the paint actually is pretty good. So now, I guess I will have this plan until I turn 90, and it will never be executed because it takes such an awful long time to use up even a tiny small pan, like a koi size pan. So that's when I know that I really love watercolor, when I can't even throw out something to make a plan work. So yeah, this is one of those palettes where I love the casing and I got a plan for it, but I actually also love the colors inside here. So Lena in a nutshell, But let me talk about palettes that comes with something extra. This was a birthday gift from my hubby, and it was spot on. He spotted that I love these wooden cases, so he got me this from Royal and Langnickel. When you open it up, you have a tray with these faux leather handles where you can lift up, and then on the bottom there was this tray. Everything in this set has been replaced with other stuff because the quality of the Royal and Langnickel was, how can I say it? It has a certain industrial scent to their paint. It's like there is this scent to the paint that kind of make me not like to use it. So I replaced it with some other paints that I like, and then I replaced the pencil set with Prismacolors. So, and this is Faber-Castell watercolor pencils, one of those where the graphite dilute itself and magically disappear if you go over it with a wet brush. So you kind of don't have to erase so many of your lines. You can kind of erase it with a wet brush. I can really recommend that. And kneaded eraser, sandpaper to sharpen your pencils with, whatnot. But I'm trying to say that if you like the house, the home, and you put in some of your likable art supplies, you end up with a custom palette that's just brings joy. And now let's talk about palettes that brings that extra joy. I have saved the best for the last. First of all, we got, it originally held Van Gogh paint, but I used them up. And then I bought some handmade watercolors from Italy called Nila Colores. And those were the first, you could say, like handmade watercolors that I tried, and I have never been disappointed. I love this palette so much. In addition to the Nila Colores that comes up here, you buy them homeless. They come like just in pans, you know, so you need to find a place for them to live in. And I was looking at the color range up here, and then I added on some core paints down here that I think was a good addition to, you know, so I could get like a bright red, for instance. Yeah. And then the buff titanium, that seems to be a good mixing color to some of these earthy tones, so you get something like really interesting mixes when you mix them with the rather opaque buff titanium. Then some shimmery effect paint from Daniel Smith, and this is Daniel Smith. This is Moonglow, which I kind of like because of thanks to Steve Mitchell to use as a shadow color. And then we got Potter's Pink because it's a granular watercolor from Daniel Smith. So if I want to add granulation to these earthy tones up here, it's just spot on. Of course, we got the Rhodonite Genuine to get that pink, because I got a very, it's called Conditional Magenta, and it's made out of crushed red beetles. Ooh, so this is totally not a vegan set, right? But those two in conjunction, if you push them back and forth, you can get really lovely, lovely, lovely magenta warm tones. So, yeah. Also, Naphthine, it's a maroon color from Daniel Smith. I can't pronounce it, but I'm playing with the maroon, the Conditional Magenta, and the Rhodonite Genuine. Those three, if you have them side by side in a mixing tray, magic will happen. I'm just saying. So we also got Serpentine Genuine because I think it's a good foliage color for me. I like to work with that for foliage. And then we got the Kyanite, which is shimmery. I actually was tipped off by James Burke because I loved his YouTube channel, and he has a love for genuine kyanite. So he kind of enabled me to try out that tube, and I never regretted it. Luna Blue from Daniel Smith, also a very, very nice tube to use in conjunction with this homemade Italian style, like Renaissance. Yeah, Renaissance is a good word for this palette to describe it. As you can hear, this is a good example of how you mix in different brands that fulfill a certain purpose to achieve that perfect palette for a specific style. Like you paint paintings in a certain style with a palette like this. So yeah, very lovable. Oh, love it. And now I got, yeah, talk about special, really beloved palette. We got this ceramic table desk palette. It was a gift from one of my subscribers, and it warms my heart so much. I mean, I have it on my desk every day. That's why you can see that it's super dusty in here in between wells. Of course, I filled it up with the best creme de la creme Daniel Smith. Once again, the Lunar Blue, Kyanite Genuine, Hematite. It's a brown. I can't. Hematite or something. It's a brown. And then my Moon Glow. And then we got that warm Hansa Yellow from the Daniel Smith Essential Set. So with these 5, I can, you know, add on. If I'm painting a painting and I need that special oomph or something, I usually find that oomph in these 5 colors. I don't know if this color selection could stand alone in one painting, but I do know that sometimes when I'm painting, I'm thinking, oh, I want to mix a green with this Hermitage brown to get that earthy burnt sienna, you know, a special mix. So I love this so much, and thank you so much, Helle. It was so sweet of you. Oh man. A special palette gifted to me was also this one from Janet M. Young. She wrote my name on top of it. She handmade the whole box with her bare hands and her ruler because it's just perfect. And she made this immaculate swatch card that's like the tiniest font ever. I mean, I have never had a swatch card this, you know, pristine made. So I put it into a plastic foiling pocket to, you know, keep it as pristine as possible. And then how did she know that I had an eye out for the Mission Gold? I was actually in my, you know, no purchase, what's it called, like no spending situation, and I had now I don't have it on my list any longer because I have this palette, but I have had the Mission Gold on my wish list for the longest time. And then she actually filled up the pans in this beautiful palette with the Mission Golds. And I have been, you can't really tell, but I really have been using this palette a lot. And the Mission Gold paint goes a long way. You barely have to dip your tip of your brush before it's loaded up with pigment. So in a way, it's very similar to Schminke. I really love it. And she even took the time to write on each pan. I don't think I can take them up because when I use them, I kind of glue them into the, oof, maybe I can take this one up. You know, when you use color, they kind of glue them together. She even took the time to write on each pan the name. So if I ever get my hands on a Mission Gold set and need to refill this, it would be just a piece of cake. This is just wonderful. I love it. And then she had built in 2 trays on the bottom so that you could put on more colors. Oh man, and it's so delicate. I barely want to ruin anything. These 2 trays are filled up with some tube paints that I got from Arteza. You know, I don't really have tubes. A lot of people have a big basket of a lot of tube paints when they collect watercolors. I tend to squeeze out my tubes into pans because that's how I like to work. So I saw some videos on YouTube where they were, you know, acrylic pouring, when you take a lot of pigments, put it on some wet to make it travel, like trophol for acrylic, but for watercolor it would be water. You can make like really abstract, nice paintings, and I wanted to try that with watercolor because there's nothing like watercolor that can become like super transparent when it's diluted down with water, so they can actually layer on top of each other in a way that acrylic can't. Plus that watercolor can feather out. I've never seen acrylic diluted that much that it actually feathers out, and I wouldn't dare do it myself, afraid of destroying the binder. So the whole motivation for getting this 60 color Arteza tube set was to give myself a stash of inexpensive watercolors in tubes. You never know when you need to squeeze out fresh paint for a project. So in a way to kind of get to a wide palette with a wide range of 60 colors, that's a heck of a lot of colors. I got this in my backhand. And was it necessary when you think about all the watercolors that I already have? Probably not, but it was nice, and I have not regretted it at all, so I like it at all. Actually, I have the 60 set of Arteza gouache, which this is what's left of that tube set. So I know the colors to begin with, and apparently I really must love it a lot since this is what's left of my Arteza gouache set. So yeah, I just wasn't afraid of getting the 60 watercolor tube set because I feel that I tested out that brand. Oh my god, we are at the end. That was it. I'm looking around. Did I miss anything? I think not. No. What's left is gouache. Maybe I can show you my gouache. You just saw that wooden palette. That's gouache. And then I also have this palette that I recently revitalized and brought back to life. It was like totally shrunk in and looked so miserable. And when gouache dries out completely, they shrink so much in their pan, so it looks so you know, lifeless. And then I added a lot of water to it and brought it back to life. And then I fell in love with gouache one more time, and a good add-on, I would call it, to these colors. You cannot tell by looking at this palette, but trust me, I have been playing with this gouache a lot. In fact, so much that I kind of got a little bit tired of this palette. You know, when you play with the same palette for a long time, it kind of gets a little bit tired. Hey, maybe that's the reason why we keep buying, us watercolor hoarders keep buying new palettes, is because we actually run out of interest of a current palette that we have used a lot. I don't know. But this set from Artex is my last purchase when it comes to water-soluble media. And I bought it because, as you can see, it's a good add-on to this existing set with these pastel colors. So, yeah, I like it a lot and have already, you know, used it. So, yeah, that's it for me. I know it was a lot. Should I come with that nasty disclaimer about I spend my own money, none in my family goes to bed hungry, or maybe not? Yes, I have a very good collection of watercolor. I have like no shame and no regret. I love them all, and I have to say that my worst nightmare is if somebody knocks on my door and tell me, you know, like, oh, would you teach me how to paint watercolors? And then I would know that before they left my house, I would provide them with a palette and paper and a brush, you know, to keep their you know, who wouldn't invite another friend to have this joy we got with color and art and painting, you know? So I know that I would provide them with something from my stash before they went home, like a goodie bag. And I love watercolor so much that that's my horror, you know, some random guest invited in another kind of occasion, like a birthday or something, watch my crap room, yeah, I did say crap room, full of crap and stuff, and ask, what are you doing in here? You're drawing, what are all this stash? And then I would have to pick a palette on the fly for them to bring home. So that's when you know that something is too precious. So yeah. But thanks for watching. This was super long. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoyed all the added story I told to all my purchasing decisions on the go. So see you out there, and I wish you a very, very happy watercolor month of July 2022. Bye bye. Whoops, I'm busted. My son overheard that I talked about I bought this, and he's like, I gave that to you for your birthday. And it's true. So I just want to correct myself that I told him this was on my wish list on Amazon, so it ended up being my birthday present. So now we got that straight. No, he's just kidding. Well, I got a comment on my pencil upload from Deb, who wanted to see my, could you call it like a travel kit? I've been mostly working with bags, you know, switching the content from bag to bag to bag, but now I ended up in this bag here, and it's Big Lebowski merchandise, going to be their take on the bowling bag. And this is currently the kit, and it's stuffed, so it holds an awful lot. I must say, it's like the shape of the bowling bag is just perfect for travel kits. So what I got in here is this is my water container for outdoor sketching. This is usually my pencil pouch that's always empty, because I always grab pencils that's on my desk, you know, micron pens that I use, and always that Uniball white Signo. I only have one pen going at the time, because if you have like several pens open, they kind of stop working. And then I got this homemade notebook holder that contains a sketchbook that was gifted to me from Janet M. Young. And I also have a homemade watercolor palette. So yeah, it's a little bit childish that I got so many homemade things. But this is what's left from the Pago set that I mixed with the Jerry Q paint. And it used to be filled up this, but since I had to build the Pago set, I took pans from this one. So I would probably pick my Winsor & Newton travel watercolor case instead of this, because this has been looted. And then I like to work in small books that I can, you know, you can like hold tight to your body, because I am really shy. So yeah, when it comes to outdoor sketches, it's I never really am satisfied with the outcome. It's always something that's done in a hurry. So yeah, it's just you either love it or hate it. And then I also like to take with me dot cards, because I think they're perfect for outdoor sketching. That tiny palette that you want to kind of force yourself to use what's on the card, because you're on the go, so you don't have palettes that you can reach for. So it kind of make you use up these dot cards. My favorite watercolor paper, oh, there was another palette, I forgot about this. This is from Panduro, which is a Danish scrapbook scrapbook crafts. Not only scrapbook, it's like all sorts of hobby store, craft store. And it's just one of their house brand. Not completely. I can see that I filled up the middle row with something. Oh my god, I totally forgot about this little kit here. Let me smell it. Yeah, it smells funky. You know what? I know what this is. This is actually the royal talons that was in that wooden birthday gift from my hubby that I took out because they had that funky smell. I can smell it. Yeah, that's it. That's the royal talons watercolor. No wonder they ended up here. My go-to sketchbook is from Paul Rubens. I really love that textured paper. I love the size. The B6 size is a good size when you're outdoor sketching because it's a small, intimate painting. You can hold the book up to your chest if someone is passing by, and you don't want them to see what you're sitting there working with. So just the fact that the notebook or the sketchbook is in book shape but with a paper block is very likable in my universe. I already used up one of these, and before I used it up, I rebuilt it. This depth, I think maybe you can get something out of. Check this out. There once was a block here with paper, right? So I had it like in landscape in front of me, holding it like this. And then here is, I don't know if you can imagine. You take your, that was mostly built for my, oh shoot, now I need to go grab the Winsor Newton set because this is customized for that set. Okay, I cleared my table to give more space. Okay, check this out. I got this portable travel set from Winsor Newton where you can attach this water cup up here by putting it into this little thingy. But before you attach it, you slide your watercolor set onto here, and then right here you have travel brushes. This is a Da Vinci travel brush, and you got pen loop holders, and you can actually have your brush ready because sometimes you need like pencil if you're on the go. Let me replace this with a pencil so it shows up. Oh, I'm just gonna grab this Prisma. Sometimes you need like your sketch pencil, 2 size brushes, and then an ink pen, and then you're sitting and drawing, and then this flap goes up like this. And then can you picture how in one hand, I'm holding my water, my color, my pencil holders. I can swap easily to another pencil. I'm not dependent on having to sit down on a bench where I can lay down things next to me. So this is actually like the ultimate sketching kit where you in one hand can have like a tool bar up here, your colors, water, your paper. Yeah, so that's like a MacGyver outdoor sketching set. And I know now that I use the paper blocks down here, I think you can buy blocks of paper A6 size loose, so you can just glue them on with no problems. So I hope that was an answer to your question, Deb, about wanting to see my outdoor kit. And basically this bowling bag is just, now it's stuffed with a lot of things that not everything may come out with me on a sketching tour. I usually also add in this 12 premium watercolor pencil set, just slides in here. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. This has been an awful long video. I hope that you at least enjoyed it. So now I'm going to end the upload. Have a nice day. Bye bye.